During Hollywood's golden age, many famous movie stars didn't believe in God. Back then, most Americans were religious, so these actors often kept quiet about their beliefs. Some were brave enough to speak up. We are going to talk about 40 golden era stars who did not follow religion and never believed in God publicly. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe's relationship with religion was complex and marked by change. Although she was baptized as a Christian during her childhood, she grew increasingly uncertain about the teachings she once knew. In her adult years, after marrying Arthur Miller, her interest shifted toward Judaism, and she formally converted on July 1, 1956, under the guidance of Rabbi Robert Goldberg. However, her connection with Judaism was more about cultural identification than deep spiritual practice. She often described herself as a Jewish agnostic. Monroe once remarked in an interview that she felt torn between the need for comfort and the desire to question everything, a sentiment that echoed her ongoing internal conflict about faith. Her personal papers and interviews reveal that she kept some religious items as mementos, even after distancing herself from organized practice. Hugh Hefner. Hugh Hefner openly challenged traditional religious views throughout his life. Known primarily as the publisher and founder of Playboy magazine, he often stated that he did not believe in God, viewing organized religion as a set of restrictive rules rather than a path to truth. Hefner once said, "Religion is a tool for control, not a way to understand the universe," reflecting his skepticism about faith-based institutions. His lifestyle and the culture he built around his magazine emphasized free thought, individual liberty, and the questioning of societal norms. Anecdotes from his life reveal that Hefner hosted debates and gatherings at the Playboy Mansion where topics such as spirituality, science, and philosophy were openly discussed without adhering to conventional religious views. His approach was grounded in a belief that human reason and personal experience should guide one's understanding of life. The discussions and interviews he participated in provided numerous insights into how he saw religion as secondary to human creativity and logical inquiry, offering a clear perspective on his non-traditional stance. Cloris Leachman. Cloris Leachman maintained a perspective on life that often questioned traditional religious practices. Throughout her long career in film and television, she made it clear in interviews that she preferred relying on her own experiences over accepting religious dogma without question. Leachman once commented, "I like to think for myself, and I don't need a rule book to tell me how to live," a statement that captured her independent spirit. She rarely participated in organized religious activities and was known for her humorous takes on topics like faith and superstition. Her approach was pragmatic. She focused on tangible experiences and personal interactions rather than abstract spiritual doctrines. In various public appearances, Leachman discussed how questioning and skepticism allowed her to enjoy life without being confined by traditional beliefs. The straightforward way in which she expressed her views provided a clear example of a celebrity who embraced critical thinking, using both wit and personal experience as guides rather than following inherited religious practices. Warren Mitchell. Warren Mitchell, best known for his sharp wit and memorable roles on stage and screen, expressed views that reflected a clear skepticism toward organized religion. In interviews and public statements, he often remarked on the absurdity he saw in rigid religious dogma. Mitchell's humor was not only a part of his acting, but also his way of addressing serious topics, including the constraints imposed by traditional beliefs. He once quipped, "I'm not one for sermons. I prefer to get my answers from life itself," highlighting his preference for personal experience over inherited religious customs. His remarks were delivered with a blend of sarcasm and insight that resonated with audiences who were also questioning established norms. Mitchell's commentary on religion was interwoven with his broader views on society, where he often challenged the status quo using a mix of satire and direct observation. His candid approach provided clear, factual perspectives on the limitations he perceived in religious institutions, offering audiences a window into his reasoned and humorous critique of faith-based traditions. George C. Scott. George C. Scott often expressed that he did not follow a set religion, He believed life should be guided by reason, art, and personal experience rather than by traditional religious rules. Scott preferred to think for himself about spiritual matters, trusting in evidence and personal observation over teachings handed down without question. His focus on honesty, fairness, and independence meant he questioned many long-accepted ideas about faith. He felt that organized religion could sometimes restrict the way people saw the world, and that individuals should make up their own minds about what is true. Scott's approach was rooted in a humanistic perspective, one that looked to the real world for answers rather than to ancient texts or established dogmas. His opinions were clear and straightforward, emphasizing critical thinking and personal integrity as essential parts of life. This clear-eyed view on belief provided a logical framework for understanding life without the need for traditional religious guidance. Kenneth Tynan. Kenneth Tynan was well known for his honest and clever opinions about many subjects, including religion. He questioned the need to follow strict old rules passed down through generations and believed that it was better to explore new ideas. Tynan often argued that traditional religious practices could limit creativity and independent thought. He trusted in the power of critical observation and believed that people should form their own opinions based on what they see and experience. His writings and public statements made it clear that he did not support the rigid doctrines of organized religion. Tynan's perspective encouraged a spirit of inquiry and openness, urging people to think for themselves and challenge old beliefs. His views were both direct and logical, offering a clear message. Using reason and curiosity is essential when exploring the big questions of life. Stanley Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick had a thoughtful view on life that did not depend on traditional religious ideas. He was very private about his personal beliefs, but he clearly did not subscribe to a specific god or organized religion. Kubrick preferred to use art, observation, and creative exploration to understand the world. In his films, he often raised big questions about existence, reality, and human nature. Kubrick believed that it was better to seek answers through careful observation and innovative storytelling rather than by following ancient religious texts. His approach was rooted in a desire to explore complex ideas in a rational and imaginative way. The themes in his movies invite audiences to think deeply and question the status quo, making his work a resource for those interested in exploring life's mysteries without relying on conventional faith. Alejandro Jodorowsky. Alejandro Jodorowsky is known for his creative work that mixes art with deep, personal spirituality. Unlike those who completely reject religion, he chose a different path by developing a unique, universal spirituality. Jodorowsky does not follow any traditional religious organization. Instead, he blends ideas from various cultures and beliefs into his own way of understanding life. He uses symbols, rituals, and creative expression to explore life's mysteries, often saying that art is a way to reach the deeper parts of our being. His work in films, comics, and theater reflects his belief that true understanding comes from within and from the willingness to question what we assume to be true. Jodorowsky's ideas encourage others to look inside themselves and combine creativity with thoughtful questioning, presenting a rich and open-ended view of spirituality. Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood has spoken plainly about his views on religion and belief. He identifies as an agnostic, meaning he is not sure whether there is a higher power, and he does not follow organized religion. Eastwood believes in relying on his own judgment and personal experiences rather than on rituals or established doctrines. His movies often explore ideas of morality and the human condition in a way that does not depend on religious explanations. He respects those who have faith, but prefers to live by practical, logical reasoning based on real-life experiences. Eastwood's approach to belief is straightforward. He focuses on the evidence of what he can see and understand, rather than on traditional religious teachings. His clear stance on spirituality continues to spark thoughtful discussions about the role of belief in modern life. Paul Taylor. Paul Taylor did not follow any organized religion, and believed that art and creativity were more important than old religious rules. He often said that dance could express feelings and ideas in ways that words sometimes could not. Taylor trusted science and personal experience to explain the world rather than relying on ancient texts. He preferred to use his body and movement as a way to explore truth, saying that reason and self-expression were better guides than traditional dogma. His work in choreography broke new ground by showing that art can be a way to understand life, even if one does not believe in a higher power. Taylor's approach was very practical. He focused on human potential and the power of creativity to solve problems. This way of thinking helped him to innovate in the field of dance, making him a major influence in modern choreography. His perspective offers clear insight into how one can live a full life, guided by reason and imagination, instead of following established religious teachings. Paul Mazursky. Paul Mazursky was known for questioning traditional religious ideas and often expressed his doubts about organized faith through his films. He believed that the stories we tell on screen could reveal truths about life that rigid religious doctrines might miss. Mazursky thought that art should come from personal experience and honest observation rather than from following ancient rules. In his movies, he explored human emotions and relationships, showing that real life is more complicated than any set of religious instructions. He argued that relying on reason and empathy was a better way to understand the world than simply accepting what was handed down through tradition. Mazursky's approach was to use the camera as a tool for discovering truth, emphasizing that personal insight and creativity can offer a more accurate picture of life. His work continues to provide an informed look at how questioning old ideas can lead to a deeper understanding of society and human nature. Mike Nichols. Mike Nichols chose not to follow traditional religious beliefs and instead relied on human reason and creativity to understand life. He believed that exploring real human relationships and emotions was far more valuable than adhering to old religious rules. Nichols often said that life's truths could be found in our everyday experiences rather than in the rituals of organized faith. His work as a director and producer focused on the genuine struggles and joys of people, using film to show how human nature works in the real world. He trusted in logic and empathy over dogma, and he preferred to let his art speak for itself when discussing life's big questions. Nichols' approach was practical and clear. He used his films to explore topics like freedom and love without the need for religious explanations. This method helped him connect with audiences and provided a straightforward view of life that was both thoughtful and realistic. Paolo Villaggio. Paolo Villaggio often used humor to question traditional religious practices and the strict rules that come with them. He was very critical of organized religion and believed that relying on old doctrines limited people's ability to see the world clearly. Villaggio used comedy and satire to show that life could be understood better by thinking for oneself. In his films and writings, he pointed out the oddities and contradictions in religious rituals, encouraging people to use their own reason and experience instead of accepting inherited beliefs. He joked about the strict ways of religious life, making complex ideas about faith easier to understand. Villaggio's style was direct and unapologetic, and his commentary was always grounded in a practical view of life. His work provides a clear picture of how skepticism towards established beliefs can be both entertaining and enlightening, offering an informed critique of traditional religious practices. François Truffaut. François Truffaut looked at life without relying on traditional religious ideas and preferred to find meaning through personal experience and artistic expression. He questioned the old religious rules and felt that stories about everyday life could speak more clearly about our existence than the teachings of organized faith. Truffaut believed that human emotions and relationships were better sources of truth than ancient doctrines. His films often depicted the real struggles and joys of life without turning to spiritual or religious explanations. He trusted in the power of art to capture the complexities of human behavior and thought, using his movies to offer a clear, realistic view of life. Truffaut's approach was based on observation and creativity, rather than on following a set of religious instructions. This informed perspective on life is evident in the honest and detailed narratives he crafted, which continue to provide valuable insights into the human condition. Roman Polanski. Roman Polanski has kept his personal religious views very private. Although he grew up in a culture steeped in Catholic tradition, he rarely discusses matters of faith publicly. Polanski's work often explores dark and complex themes of human nature and morality without relying on conventional religious ideas. He does not follow any organized religion and tends to focus on storytelling that reflects real-life struggles and ethical dilemmas. In interviews, he has mentioned that he prefers to let his films ask big questions rather than giving clear religious answers. This approach has led him to create works that provoke thought about right and wrong, without leaning on ancient texts or rituals. Polanski's films serve as a window into his perspective on life, where human experience and personal responsibility are the main guides rather than religious dogma. His careful and observant style provides a look at the world that is guided by individual insight and creative expression. Larry King. Larry King has been active for many decades in radio and television, grew up in a Catholic environment, but developed a broad and open view on faith. He often emphasized that religion is a personal matter, and believed that people should make up their own minds about what to believe. On his shows, he invited religious leaders and thinkers from many different traditions, treating discussions about spirituality as part of understanding the human experience. King was known to say that faith should be based on listening and learning rather than just following old rules. His many interviews reflected a respect for diverse viewpoints and an emphasis on human connection and rational discussion. Throughout his career, Larry King used his platform to share ideas that encouraged critical thinking about traditional beliefs, making the topic of faith accessible and relevant to a wide audience. Joan Bakewell. Joan Bakewell has been a thoughtful voice on the role of religion in modern society. She has expressed that she values evidence and reason more than simply following traditional religious customs. Bakewell's approach to faith is marked by questioning and exploring ideas rather than accepting them at face value. In her public talks and writings, she has pointed out that old doctrines sometimes do not fit with contemporary ways of thinking. Her clear and direct discussions about religion focus on the need for fairness and a willingness to challenge established ideas. Bakewell has often used her platform as a journalist and presenter to highlight how critical inquiry can improve our understanding of both religion and culture. Her work provides informed commentary on the evolution of beliefs in a modern world. Woody Allen. Woody Allen is well known for his views on religion, which are expressed with a blend of humor and skepticism. He has often described himself as agnostic, meaning he is not sure whether there is a higher power. Allen once remarked that he finds it hard to believe in a God because he prefers to trust human experience and logic over ancient religious stories. His films and writings are filled with questions about life's big mysteries, love, death, and the search for meaning, without relying on religious answers. Allen's style is marked by witty observations and self-deprecating humor, which he uses to critique traditional faith. By focusing on human flaws and the unpredictable nature of life, he presents a view of the world that encourages independent thought and critical examination of what is often taken for granted. His commentary offers clear insights into his personal approach to spirituality and reason. George Carlin. George Carlin was a comedian famous for his blunt and clever take on religion. In his stand-up routines, he often joked about an invisible man in the sky and pointed out the funny contradictions in religious beliefs. Carlin did not believe in following any organized religion and used humor to encourage people to question ideas that were handed down without proof. He argued that human beings should use observation and reason to understand the world instead of accepting religious dogma. Carlin's routines were filled with memorable lines that challenged conventional thinking and made audiences reconsider the logic behind long-held beliefs. His words were direct and factual, focusing on the importance of questioning and thinking independently about topics like faith and authority. Carlin's approach remains a clear example of how humor can be used to discuss serious issues about belief in a way that is both engaging and informative. Alan Scarf. Alan Scarf grew up in a family where traditional religious ideas were a part of daily life. As he started exploring the world of theater, film, and writing, his view on faith began to change. Working on creative projects and reading widely, he started questioning old ideas and looking for answers in art and reason. Over time, Allen moved away from strictly following those early teachings. He found that his own experiences and thoughtful study offered him a new way to understand life. This shift wasn't sudden, but happened gradually as he explored different cultures and ideas through his work. His creative journey became a path where traditional beliefs were set aside in favor of a more personal, thoughtful approach to what is real and true. His story of transition shows how exposure to diverse perspectives can reshape one's understanding of faith and the world around us. Paul Verhoeven. Paul Verhoeven was raised in an environment where traditional religious practices played an important role. As he became a filmmaker, his work took him into a world of bold ideas and controversial topics. In making movies that challenged the status quo, he began to question the beliefs he had known as a child. The vivid stories and complex characters in his films led him to see that truth might not come from ancient texts, but from modern experiences and rational thought. Over the years, Paul moved away from the familiar religious teachings of his youth. His films, which often mix humor, drama, and sharp criticism, reflect a mind that has grown skeptical of old doctrines. Verhoeven's journey of transition, from a traditional background to a more secular questioning approach, is evident in the way he uses film to explore the darker and more complicated sides of human nature. Ian Smith. Ian Smith started his life in Australia with the usual religious teachings of his community. However, as he began working in television and writing for soap operas, he found that the creative world encouraged a questioning of old ideas. The stories he helped bring to life made him wonder about the rules he had always followed. Gradually, Ian shifted from accepting traditional religious views to embracing a perspective that valued personal insight and modern thinking. His work as a scriptwriter allowed him to experiment with ideas and challenge the old ways of looking at the world. This change in his thinking was part of a broader journey where he learned to rely on evidence and personal experience rather than only on inherited beliefs. Ian Smith's story of transition shows how professional and creative experiences can lead someone to form a more independent and reflective view of life. Terry Wogan. Terry Wogan was raised in a culture where Catholic traditions were very important. Over time, however, his work in radio and television, along with his interactions with people from many walks of life, led him to question some of those early teachings. Terry began to see that while the values of kindness and community were important, the strict rituals and dogmas were not the only way to understand life. His thoughtful and gentle manner allowed him to explore different ideas, and he eventually adopted a more relaxed and questioning stance on traditional religion. In interviews and on-air conversations, he would often reflect on the need for open-mindedness and the importance of learning from each other. Terry Wogan's transition from a traditional religious background to a more questioning, human-centered outlook provides insight into how life experiences can shape and sometimes change deeply held beliefs. William B. Davis. William B. Davis was raised in a home where religious traditions were common, but as he grew older, he focused more on facts and reason. He rarely spoke about following a strict faith, and his work showed a clear interest in thinking logically about the world. Over time, he moved away from the ideas he grew up with, choosing instead to trust science and personal observation. This shift helped him shape a view that valued critical thinking over accepting ideas without proof. His quiet approach to spirituality left him comfortable with questioning traditional beliefs while finding meaning in evidence and everyday life. Paul Daniels. Paul Daniels was brought up with familiar religious customs, but eventually began to see the world in a different light. As he became a well-known magician and entertainer, he started to question old beliefs and found that the magic of life was best understood through humor and clear thinking. He often joked about religion and expressed that following strict dogma did not fit with his view of life. Over the years, he chose to use his talent to entertain and inform, preferring a practical and playful approach to understanding the world rather than adhering to traditional religious practices. Sir Ian McKellen. Sir Ian McKellen grew up in an environment where religious ideas were common, Yet he soon discovered that his own heart and mind led him in a different direction. Over time, he questioned the old teachings and found that his personal experience and a love for literature and art were more meaningful than strict rituals. He came to believe that true wisdom comes from questioning and understanding rather than just accepting inherited ideas. This change in perspective has been a steady part of his life, as he continues to speak plainly about valuing reason and personal insight when it comes to faith. Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee, born in 1940, clearly stated that he had no religious affiliation. When asked about his beliefs, he said, "None whatsoever," and added, "To be perfectly frank, I really do not believe in God." Growing up, he was exposed to different ideas, but he chose to rely on his own discipline, martial arts training, and personal philosophy instead of following a set religion. His focus was on self-improvement and understanding the world through physical and mental strength. This strong, independent outlook guided his actions both in and out of the martial arts arena. Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart was raised with traditional religious ideas, but gradually came to trust his own reasoning and experience. Over time, he moved away from strict religious practices and started to see life as something to be understood through human kindness and rational thought. He believes that while many find comfort in old beliefs, it is also important to look at the world with fresh eyes and question what is taught. His journey shows a steady transition from following a set path to choosing a way of life based on thoughtful consideration and empathy. Peter Fonda. Peter Fonda grew up in an era when traditional values were the norm, but as he reached adulthood, he began to question those established ideas. He embraced a more open and countercultural approach, preferring to live by personal freedom and individual thought. Over the years, Fonda challenged the old ways of thinking about religion, choosing instead to explore life on his own terms. His transition was marked by a move toward skepticism of conventional rules, as he valued creative expression and self-determination over accepting traditions without question. John McCririck. John McCririck, known for his direct style, rarely spoke about deep religious beliefs. In his career as a television personality, he became known for his outspoken and sometimes irreverent attitude toward traditional ideas, including those about religion. Over time, he appeared to step away from following any particular religious path, instead focusing on practical matters and real-life experiences. His way of speaking about life suggested that he valued a straightforward approach to the rituals and traditions of organized faith, offering a perspective based on common sense and personal experience. John Davidson. John Davidson was raised with religious values that many people in his community followed. However, as he built his career as a singer, actor, and game show host, he shifted his focus more toward the excitement of the stage and the world of entertainment. This change led him to adopt a more secular view, relying on personal experience and rational thought rather than strict religious practices. Davidson's journey shows a move from a traditional upbringing to a lifestyle where artistic expression and modern ideas take precedence over conventional faith. Sylvester McCoy. Sylvester McCoy experienced a gradual shift in how he thought about religion as he grew older and pursued a career in acting. Initially raised with common religious traditions, McCoy later began to explore ideas beyond the confines of organized faith. His work, especially in roles that required a deep sense of mystery and transformation, encouraged him to question long-held beliefs and look for answers in personal experience and creativity. Over time, he moved away from strictly following the religious practices of his upbringing, choosing instead to trust a more individual and thoughtful approach to understanding life. McCoy's transition is marked by his willingness to consider alternative viewpoints and to use his art as a means of exploring the unknown. Bernardo Bertolucci. Bernardo Bertolucci grew up in a country with strong Catholic traditions, but as he explored the world of cinema, he began to question those early teachings. Through making films that delved into the complexities of human nature and society, he developed a more secular and philosophical view of life. Bertolucci's work reflected his journey from accepting religious dogma to embracing ideas based on reason and personal experience. His transition involved moving away from traditional beliefs, and using his art to express a deep, thoughtful view of the world that challenged old conventions. Peter Greenaway. Peter Greenaway, born in 1942, grew up surrounded by traditional ideas but later chose a path that focused on art and logic rather than on inherited religious rules. As he delved into the world of film and creativity, Greenaway began to see that structured beliefs could sometimes limit the way people understood the world. He started questioning the old doctrines and used his work to explore complex ideas about life, beauty, and human nature. His films are filled with intricate details and symbolic images that challenge viewers to think critically, not only about art, but also about traditional faith. Over time, his perspective shifted from accepting religious teachings without question to using reason and personal insight as guides. This change is reflected in the unique style of his movies, which invite audiences to look beyond the obvious and consider deeper meanings. Eric Idle. Eric Idle became known for his witty humor and clever observations, especially about religion. Growing up in Britain, he was exposed to common religious ideas, but as he became a part of the comedy world with Monty Python, he began to see those beliefs in a new light. Idle has often expressed that he does not follow traditional religion, and he uses humor to point out the inconsistencies in old dogmas. His jokes and sketches frequently poke fun at the idea of an all-powerful deity, and he has been quoted saying that he does not see any reason to follow practices that seem outdated. Over the years, his perspective shifted from simply accepting the norms to questioning them openly on stage and in his writings. David Cronenberg. David Cronenberg has always been fascinated by the darker and more complex parts of human nature. Growing up with the familiar religious ideas of his time, he gradually began to question those teachings as he explored themes of the body, mind, and transformation in his films. Cronenberg moved away from traditional faith and focused instead on using science, psychology, and art to understand life. His movies often delve into what happens when the human body and mind change in unexpected ways, reflecting his belief that reality is best understood through a combination of reason and imagination. Over time, his personal journey led him to adopt a more secular and investigative approach to life's mysteries.